Welcome to the Daughter Dearest Podcast with Simone and Olivia Knego, making the world a better place one conversation at a time. Mom Simone and daughter Olivia share authentic discussions about everything under the sun, including those things you might be thinking about but feel uncomfortable talking about. Thanks for tuning in. Now here are your hosts, Simone and Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Daughter Dearest Podcast. I'm Simone Knego.
And I'm Olivia Knego.
And today we are going to be talking about celebrating life.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away last week. And not only is this like a tribute to her, but really talking about how hard it is when someone in your life passes away, for your family, for your friends. And so we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
I love how you always say, yeah.
Okay. Well, you don't need to pull me out, but grief is a weird thing.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's a weird emotion.
You know, it's interesting when, well, for my mother-in-law, it was expected. I don't want to say expected, but she was 90. She was in memory care, and she actually had a stroke about a month ago. And so she was in the hospital and then in rehab and then back in the hospital. And so like we knew that it was eventually coming, but it's still not an easy thing. And I think my husband he really thought that he was totally prepared for this, that he made his peace. He felt okay. And then when she passed away, he couldn't believe how sad he was. Like, it was really hard for him to wrap his head around it. And I think that's the thing about grief, is that you can't control it. You can't control how you feel. You just know how it's going to come over you.
Yeah, I mean, you only experience grief. It's not a common emotion, I guess, or a common feeling. So it's kind of something you don't have practice in preparing for. And it's so unique to an individual that I don't even think there is like methods of preparation, because like, who is telling you how you're going to feel? I mean, you don't even know how you're going to feel.
Absolutely true. And I think that grief is such a different emotion than sadness. Like, it encompasses so much more than just sadness.
Yeah, it's not just sadness, because a lot of it can be anger or even happiness as well.
Right. And I think it also is, a portion of it could be regret, or I wish I would have, I should have done this. And so I think grief is a lot on the person who's experiencing it. Right. We have these guilty feelings that we did something wrong, or that we didn't do enough, or that if I only could have done this, or if I only said this. I think that that's something that we really struggle with.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're always like looking back to the past and trying to find not where we went wrong, but where we could have done better, I guess. And I think grief is a time in your life where you really, really reflect on your past, because there is no, I don't want to say there's no future, but for that relationship that just is gone now, there is no future for it. So there is really only looking back to the past.
And I'm a big believer in not focusing on the past, really looking at the things that we didn't do or that we should have done as learning opportunities, instead of hyper focusing on them and feeling incredible guilt about them. But I do think that looking back at things to see all of the great memories, I think that's the important thing about the past. That the two parts to it: one, that you do have all these great memories, and that two, that you learn to use the past as a learning opportunity instead of just regret. And I'm overgeneralizing, because obviously there are plenty of people who have had situations in their lives where they look back and it was a miserable time for them, right? They really struggled with things. So, but I do still think that can be a learning opportunity. But going back to your dad, I thought it was really interesting because he's usually very stoic, and for him to be hit with that emotion of grief where he really didn't know how to handle it. He didn't know how to place it. It kind of was all encompassing. And he's doing better. It's only been a few days. He's doing better, but it's still something that he wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I think that's interesting for him. I don't know. Like, I feel like he didn't have like the chance to take a step back and really like process the fact that his mom was dying. Like, I think he was so in, I don't want to say doctor mode, but so technical about it. But like, yeah, your mom's dying. Like, of course you're gonna feel something.
And here's something I have to say that, so at the end, they moved her over to hospice house, and that facility was amazing. It's beautiful and clean and just so well thought out, not just for the person who is passing, but for the family, so that you feel comfortable and you feel like it really was such a positive experience. And for my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law was there with her when she passed. So, and it was very, very peaceful. And I know my sister-in-law was really happy to have been there. I think a lot of people struggle with that, where, you know, should you be there? Should you not be there? What's the best thing? And I can tell you that I was there when my father-in-law passed away, and I was there when my dad passed away. And unfortunately for me, like, when I think back, that's the first thing that comes to my mind of when I remember them. I mean, I can push it aside, but it still is such a visual in my mind that I think it's a really hard thing to get over. And I think fortunately my mother-in-law, her passing was very peaceful. So, but I think a lot of people struggle. Like, what's the right thing? What do we do?
I don't know. I think that is so circumstantial. I think that there is no right answer when it comes to grief, when it comes to celebrating someone's life, when it comes to passing away. I think it really is. It so depends on the person.
So now as we look back and we think back of her life and all of the amazing things that she did, she's a very unique woman. I mean, she's from Croatia. She was sponsored to come to well, she was actually in Canada, but she was sponsored to come to the US, and she was a nurse. And then she met Rock's dad, and they got married, and they had 2 kids, and she was an amazing cook. Like, she could cook anything. She could create anything out of whatever she had in her fridge, and it was always good. She made strudel, which was fantastic. Yeah. Everything was, you know, she hand pulled her dough. She made amazing cookies too.
Yeah.
And I think the way people will remember her is that she was an amazing grandmother, right? She loved her grandkids more than anything in the world. It was, anytime you asked her, can you watch them? Of course. Like, she just wanted to be with them. And I think that's one of the hard things. Like, as kids get older, it's not that same relationship, right? When kids are really young, they want to be with the grandparents all the time. For
sure.
And then as they get older, I think it's hard. I mean, parents get it. Like, we understand that our kids are moving on and they're going to go off to college and they're going to build their own family. But I think for grandparents, I think it's even more difficult because what they think about is this young child who just needed them.
Yeah.
And now they're in
grown.
Yeah, they're in the background. They're not so needed anymore. So which is a tough thing. But she had a lot of amazing things that she did for the kids, and she was
absolutely,
she really
great grandmother.
Yeah, she let them get away with everything,
as a good grandma does.
Yeah, I mean, cookies at 10 o'clock at night, jumping on the bed, coloring on the walls. That was one of my favorites. When I came over, and I was like, "What happened there?" She's like, "Oh, They wanted to color. So I just let them color. I'm like, what? They can't color on the wall.
Why not though?
Well, why not? It's not my house, but still, I was like, yeah, but they need to understand that they can't do it at anybody else's house, right? If you're allowing it here, they might not understand that, like, that's not okay. So, but yeah, she did everything for them, and really, that was her focus, was wanting to take care of her grandkids.
Yeah. A lot of really intense memories. Like, intense in the way of not, like, bad, but more of just, like, I really remember her house growing up and the trees in the backyard, climbing on those, and just, like, always making strudel or palachinko with her, which are, like, Croatian grapes, the night before. We'd always sleep over at our grandparents' house, was growing up on the weekends. It was just, like...
a way for your dad and I to escape. We would drop the kids off, and we'd have a night alone, and
yeah. I mean, it was fun for us, though. We got to see our grandparents, and I feel like I'm so lucky to have grown up in the same town as both of my sets of grandparents. I think that's such a privilege that not even my cousins get. Like,
yeah, we were pretty strategic about it. I mean, we really wanted to be near my parents and Rob's parents, and fortunately they both lived in the same town, so that worked out well. But I think that
but it's more than that. It's not like my mom and dad are, like, from the same hometown. They just both happen to retire in the same town.
Yeah,
I think it's just a weird coincidence that it worked out the way it did.
well, we used to come here all the time when I was little. We used to have a condo down
so
here.
Did my dad also went down here for vacation with his godparents.
Yeah, so they all love the area, so that's why they all moved back here. And we moved here for a job, but it was also to be close to them, because we didn't know we were going to have 6 kids at the time, but it would have been so much more difficult if we didn't have that family support locally.
There's just something so nice about, like, knowing that someone is going to be at every single one of your, whatever that is, like a soccer game or like a musical or whatever. There was always at least a grandparent there. If you guys couldn't be there, there's someone to be there. And it's just like, that's a privilege that not a lot of people get.
Yeah, definitely. My sister lives in Switzerland, so her kids, they had my brother-in-law's parents, while they were alive, obviously lived in the same town. But, not having, we're very fortunate that we had both sets of grandparents there. So we could pick and choose, like, okay, who do we want to watch the kids this weekend, or who's available? And so it just made it really, really special for the kids. And I think they'll have memories forever on all the amazing things that they were able to do.
Yeah, I think I have, like, a relationship and memories with my grandparents that so many people my age just don't have. Like, I don't know. A lot of my friends, they barely know their grandparents just because of, like, location or just, like, whatever. I also think it kind of set an unrealistic expectation of what families are going to be like. Not that our family is anywhere near perfect, by the way. We don't have any
we're not
family reunions, but more of just, like, when it comes to holidays, well, it's not going to be like, oh, whose house are you going to go to? It was always like, what do you mean? Like, both sets of grandparents are coming to our house. We're not. So.
Yeah, we always had everybody together for every holiday. Like, and it was fun looking back at old pictures and seeing pictures of my dad at my in-laws, or my parents at my in-laws' place, because every birthday we celebrated together, every kid's birthday we celebrated together, every big holiday we celebrated together.
It's just like, it was such a cohesive family unit growing up. Like, I don't know, it was so nice. It was just so nice to have family that supports you, because we don't have this great cousin or, like, extended uncle and aunt network.
Yeah, we have a very small family. We have a very small family, so it's nice to have that, even though it's small, to have everybody be so close.
Sure. Yeah.
Going back to the grief part, though, when my dad passed away, I knew that I was going to really struggle. I don't think I knew how badly I would struggle. And it's still a factor today. I really think my insomnia began when my dad was sick. And the idea that you can't pick up the phone and call and really whatever, I think this is a really important thing to note for most people. that whatever you struggle with in your relationship, my biggest piece of advice is that you have to make peace with that before they're gone. Because if you don't, you can't fix it afterwards, and you can't push it aside because it just weighs on your shoulder. And I know that happened when my father-in-law passed away. My husband, I just said, you got to let these things go. You have to say your piece, whatever it is, and know that nobody is perfect. And, most of the time he had your best interest in mind, and that but you have to make peace with it for yourself.
My therapist had really good advice. I don't even know what we were talking about. It wasn't like about you guys. Just
that's okay. You can talk shit about us.
Whatever. It's my therapist. I'm allowed to do what I want. But she said something like, "It's your parents' first time on Earth too, and it's their first time doing everything too." And I think it probably came up in conversation about just like, you guys always know what to do. It feels like, but that I think is like, I think growing up, you don't see your parents as humans. I guess you see them as superheroes, but because you seem like you can do everything. Like I could be like, my shoes are squeaking, and you'd find a solution for that.
It's true.
But it is like, this is your parents' first time on Earth, and as much as they care, they're probably going to mess up, because name one human being that has never made a mistake.
Yeah, we mess up on a regular basis. I mean, there's no manual, and even if there were, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had a manual for like anything in your life, but when is it actually like work?
Yeah, well, maybe, and even for like the basic things like putting together a crib. Okay, there's always pieces missing, so you got to like do it on the fly.
Yeah, like
so when it comes,
instructions aren't normally great, and I have to make things up, like fill in the blanks a little bit.
Yeah, so when it comes to kids, there's not one way of doing anything. I mean, you really have to, it's like the way they teach math now. There's 17 ways to solve a multiplication problem. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah. I mean, I learned one. That's the thing about kids, is that there's not one way of doing things. You have to do what works for you and what works for the kid. And, I think that is true with, maybe the bonus of grandparents is that I always say that I want to be a grandparent one day. I don't, there's no pressure. It's so funny because I think my parents' generation, that was their big thing, is that creating the next
big thing.
Creating the next generation.
Her mom.
Oh yeah.
I was like, this is morbid, but we joke all the time with her about her passing away. This is not like okay.
This sounds horrible.
But she honestly, she makes the jokes herself, and I'll be like, Grandma, why would you say that? And then she'll just like laugh.
Yeah.
But she was like, the one thing I want before I pass away is to have a great grandkid.
Yeah. That's like her. Okay. That's like, okay, no pressure, no pressure. She's like,
that's like such an intense pressure.
She's like, I think I'm going to tell Jacob and Abby, like, they have to get married and they have to have a kid before I die. Because I was like, okay, it doesn't work that way, Mom. But like for my generation, like I don't even think about it like that. Like I'm not, oh my gosh, you have to have a grandkid. Like I will definitely enjoy it when they do.
You don't think about that right now because your kids are so widespread in age, but you still have kids at home. I think and not to say like the first couple of years are going to be like, oh, no one's at home, or at least the first year. And then like, you're going to be like, okay, well, I guess now I need something to do.
I don't know. I'm plenty busy. Thank you.
Oh, I know.
I planned early. That's why I do all the things that I do. So I don't have to be like sad. Because imagine going from 6 kids to nothing, how hard that would be. Going from 1 kid to not having a kid at home, I think is it is a tough thing. You're so used to this schedule and routine that it's hard to let it go. But that's why I do all the things I do, so that I knew I would be bored or I would be maybe a little crazy out of my mind when everybody was gone. But I'm not waiting. It's not like oh my gosh, I'm going to be an empty nester and this is going to be so fantastic. I like having the kids come back and forth. It's not, it's just part of the progression of life, right?
Yeah.
You want your kids to spread their wings and leave the nest and find something that they love to do and people that they love to be with. So I think that's all part of it. But going back to the whole grief thing, like for me with my dad, I really think, I knew I was going to struggle. I knew that it was going to be really hard, but I don't think I realized how much it would affect kind of all aspects of my life, including my sleep. And that's a killer. And it's a hard thing when you, and I would imagine it's even way harder when a parent watches a child pass away. But as a child watching a parent pass away, it's just emotions that aren't something that you deal with on a regular basis. I mean, we deal with sadness on a regular basis, but not that form of grief where it's just all encompassing, and you have to figure out, how do I get out of bed in the morning?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, grief in general, because like I didn't experience, the first funeral that I can remember going to was my grandfather, my dad's death. So that now I was pretty old, especially not pretty old. I was like 16, but I remembered like Jacob had a friend unfortunately pass away when he was in college, and he was like, "This is the first time I've ever had to deal with like grief, because we've never had." And I think the first time of dealing with it, or just like, even experiencing loss, is like so shocking, because it's so foreign, and literally just I don't know, it's such a tangible emotion too, because it's like 1 minute someone's there and 1 minute they're not.
Yeah, it is very tangible. And I think also that you can't prepare yourself even when it's expected.
God, of course not. I don't know. Like, actually, I was sitting in my bed like right after I got the phone call about my grandmother. And I came home for the weekend just to be with family, because I think it's so important. But I was like, I don't know why I'm being so emotional right now. And then it was like, wait, like my grandma just died. So you don't think about it. You're like, why is it like this and why is it like that? But there's, yeah, you can't prepare. You don't know how it's going to be.
Yeah, I think that really though, even when you think you're prepared, how difficult it is. And I think we all go through that guilt, right? Of, I should have done this. I should have been there more. I should have went to visit more. I should have. And, life happens, right? Like we can't make ourselves feel guilty for everything. Like, I think that we really have to focus on all the good things in the past and learn from the bad things. Because if we don't, then we're just going to be in this miserable cycle of grief. And actually, your dad said that he actually slept okay last night. So like that was a good start. But I think you have to figure out how you can, number one, you got to make peace with things before they're gone. And number two, if you can't do that, you have to figure out how to make peace with yourself.
I also think, like, number 3, side note, it is so okay to ask for help during this time. I mean, I think one of the biggest messages in this podcast is like, it's okay to ask for help. Mm-hmm. But during times of grief, it's especially okay. And like, if you're scared of rejection during this time, you should never be scared, especially when reaching out for help. But this is the one time that I promise you, everyone is going to be at your doorstep if you are saying, I am not okay right now.
And you got to accept the help. Yep. Like I'm horrible about, like, people will be like, oh, can I bring dinner? Can I do this? I'm like, no, we're fine. I'm like, you know what? If they're offering to help, it's because they mean it. It's not because they feel obligated to. They don't have to. They don't have to reach out. I would not think twice if someone didn't reach out and didn't offer help. I wouldn't even be thinking about it. But if they offer it, it's because they want to help. They want to be there. They want to do something, because they too understand what it's like to grieve or to struggle. And there is absolutely, I mean, I say no shame, but it's an important part, I think, of healing, is to accept help from other people.
Also, there's no shame in asking for professional help during times of grief, like going to a mental health counselor or a therapist. I think that it's less common in my generation, but in your generation, I still think there's such a stigma around seeking mental health help. And I think during a grief period, like, it's totally normal to go and see a grief counselor, because like, this is foreign. It's a foreign concept for you. You're not going to know how to do it. And these people are trained in knowing how to do it.
Yeah. I do think my generation still struggles with that a bit, but I think that's one of the reasons that I love doing this show with you is that we can talk about these things and say, we are not therapists. We are not psychologists or psychiatrists, but there is something very important about having someone to talk to and someone to give you strategies and help you move through.
This is like a tangent about I think everyone should go to therapy, but that's all I need to say. But I was talking to my friends about it because they're still reluctant, even with my generation. And I was like, it's kind of like having, this sounds weird, but a one-sided friendship in the way of you can put your whole like problems and loads and issues and all of your mental turmoils on them, and they don't expect anything back. They're just there to solve the problems. And like, sometimes that's what you just need. You need like a friend, but you can't have their baggage if you're also going through baggage. And also like, it's kind of unfair sometimes if you're like, oh, by the way, this is like every single bad thing that's ever happened to me ever. But like, that's what the therapist is for.
Yeah, I think that when you try to explain everything to your friends, sometimes there's two things that happen. One, okay, they'll listen. Two, they might have, a few things. They might have some good advice.
Yeah.
But a lot of times what I see is that as soon as you say something that you're struggling with, the other person says something that they're struggling with. Right? So you don't necessarily get the help you need from that.
Which is great. It's great when you're talking and you're not even willing to admit the fact that you are struggling. So that's a great time. Even talking about grief, just like being able to tell your friend and like, hey, and them saying it's back, like, hey, like, I also feel this way. Like, I'm also struggling. But first coming up with actual solutions and like solving it, sometimes it is just easier to go to someone that's not going to just like, yeah, good. Like, this is also what I'm dealing with. I get completely what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like it's a competition of what you're struggling with, but
relatability is like one of the most common things that we do within conversations. It's like if someone says something, we try to find some way to tie it back to ourselves. And it's just like what humans do.
And sometimes that works really well. Sometimes you do want, when someone says, I'm really struggling, and then you say, well, I'm really struggling too, you find that sense of common ground. But I think a lot of times what you actually need is someone to help you figure out, one, why you're struggling, and number two, how to move through it. Not to say that you're going to conquer it, but how you're going to move through these certain parts.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Because I think that's
like, how do you get
That's the hardest part, is it's not like you're not going to be able to fix it. When grief happens, it'll be on the back burner. It'll get quiet, but unfortunately that person is never going to come back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's definitely.
So it's not conquering it. It's learning how to push through, how to go on.
You need to move closer.
I'm sorry.
I can tell on this episode I'm going to be way louder than her because you can see.
Well, you know what? Your face is more of the screen, so that makes sense.
Okay. You move in.
Okay.
You move in. Yeah, so. And it's also interesting to watch the different reactions with siblings and grief. And even watching you guys, how, like, Millie cried. You, like, cried substantially. Emma cried when we went to hospice house. She cried a lot. And then Ari, I think the boys are just more stoic about it. They didn't have that same. And I'm not overgeneralizing. I'm not saying, men don't cry. Please cry. Like, it's important to cry. But
I don't know if Jacob cried.
I don't know. We weren't with him.
Yeah, I mean, he might have. I don't think he would have told us if he did.
Ari and Noah, there's that piece of sadness of that. Okay, they're never going to see her again, but it wasn't that. Yeah. It wasn't like a breakdown in the moment. I've
really seen Ari cry. I'm not going to lie. So
yeah, Ari had. So when my dad passed away, I think that was really tough because he was sitting there holding my dad's hand when he died, and it wasn't the most peaceful of deaths. And I think that's a really hard thing as a child to. And this time I said to the kids, if you want to go see her, that's up to you. Like, I'm not going to say you need to be there. I think that it is a really hard thing.
Yeah.
So I think that if I could go back in time, I would say that Ari shouldn't have been there, because if I can't get it out of my mind, you definitely can't get it out of his.
Yeah, but it's hard because you want to say goodbye, but you should always try and remember like the best of the person. And oftentimes when they're passing away, they're not the best.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I have it in my head moving forward, is that I really want to remember my family members who have passed at their best moments, not at their worst. I mean, trust me, we all have horrible moments, but really remembering them at their best and really kind of trying to fill my memories with those memories instead of thinking about the really tough times.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this was quite a depressing episode, but we thought it was important to talk about. Yeah, we're all about being real and authentic, and this is what we're going through right now. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there right now that are struggling with something similar. And you know, my advice, you can add your own, is really to just one foot in front of the other. Each day is going to be different, and not focusing on the past except for the happy memories, because you can't change the past, right? Mm-hmm. You can't say, I wish I shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? And I think that if we go through everything in life and say, I should have done this, I should have done that, then we're not living, right? We have to be able to move forward. So really not focusing on the past other than the happy memories, and really figuring out how, if you didn't make your peace with the person while they were still alive, that this is the time to make the peace with yourself, because there's nothing else you can do about it. So, and like Liv said, talk to a mental health counselor. Find someone that can help you.
A permanent thing. It could even just be one conversation.
Yeah. Or it might lead to many conversations that can help in so many ways. And I agree with her when she says that everybody needs someone to talk to. Everybody could use some therapy. There's not one of us that doesn't struggle.
Yeah. I think my advice is give yourself a break during this time.
Yeah.
You're going to want to pretend that everything's okay, but it's okay that not everything's okay.
Yeah. There's no time in life that, I know we say focus on the positive, but there are many times where it's okay that things are not okay.
Yeah.
It's okay that you don't feel good. It's okay that you don't want to get out of bed, but take your time and then move forward, because if you just stay in that place, it's going to be really hard to move forward from there. So,
you can't let grief consume you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Daughter Dearest podcast. And we will be back with you next week for something. We're going to have a guest next week, and it's going to be much more uplifting. So
for sure.
We look forward to seeing everyone then. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Daughter Dearest podcast with Simone and Olivia Knego. We hope this episode has made your day just a little bit brighter and given you the inspiration you need to confidently go about your week. Always remember to be authentically you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to connect with them on Instagram at Daughter Dearest Podcast, at Simone Knego, and at Olivia Knego. Till next time.